Very good evening, Master. I wish you and our friend channel a great 2020. Happy 2020 for the entire Brotherhood of Light. Let's go to our session, the first session of the year. Let's consult our friends from the Brotherhoods who accompany us to define the subject together. As expected, the subject we will address in this first session of the year is about annual planning. It is important that we take advantage of this energy of peace and brotherhood that the whole world vibrates during this period to draw up plans for this year. It is very important that each of us take advantage of this moment of renewal to think, to reflect about what happened last year. Which lessons can I take from both the positive facts and the negative facts that occurred? Always with a constructive view of what happened in order to take advantage of the good things, learn lessons, and no longer make the same mistakes. It is also important to set goals, to set short, medium, and long-term goals for our lives. It is important to always take a first step towards that greater goal. And may this greater goal always consider that we are here in this material world for spiritual elevation, for spiritual evolution. So it's important that we keep this in mind when we set our short, medium, and long-term goals. No matter how old we are, we must always set goals. Based on these goals, the universe will conspire in our favor so that these goals are achieved. If we don't know where we want to go ourselves, it is certainly more difficult for the spiritual plane to help us, for the universe to conspire. If you don't have the vision of what you are getting at, it's hard for us, for the whole universe to help, right? So yes, we have to set our goals. Yes, we have to define where we want to go, even if these goals have to be changed over the course of the year, over the course of our lives. That's not a problem. Sometimes we have a certain goal, a certain plan, and through our free will, through new experiences in life, the course of things is redirected. That's no problem at all. But we have to have a direction. We have to have a destination. And for that, we have to plan. Always have a vision of where you want to get to in the future. Of course, we have to live the present moment intensely. We can't just aim for the future. We have to enjoy the now, but we have to have our plans. So it is important to stress the need for balance in our lives. In every area, we have to have balance. Radicalism, both in the vision of the future or in the experience of the present is never ideal. The ideal is to live in balance. What I mean is that we need to live in the present. We cannot live only thinking about the future, only setting goals for the future, just thinking that we will be happy in the future. We have to live our now. We have to be happy in our present moment. On the other hand, living only in the now without having a goal for the future is also not a good thing. You need to know where you want to get to. There are many people who accumulate goods, thinking only about the future, and they don't live in the present moment. And there are people who spend all their goods in the present, without having the slightest vision for the future. In other words, they live the present intensely without thinking about tomorrow. These two examples are not good. We have to keep the balance. There are also those who live from the past, those people who brag about things from the past, or even worse, others who only think about sadness of the past. They cannot get rid of these sorrows and end up losing their present, and certainly losing their future as well. With these three examples, what we try to convey is that we do have to have good memories from the past. As we have said before, we have to learn from the mistakes of the past. We have to seek our happiness in the present, but we also have to have our goals for the future. As we have said, we must have the balance between the past, the present, and future. We also have to have balance in other parts of life, social life, material life, life at work, and spiritual life. No human being can or has to live in isolation in the world. The human being needs to learn to live with his neighbors in a community, whatever it may be. It is important to know how to live in communion with other people in the world. Joy and happiness have a lot to do with our relationship with our neighbors, the people who are close to us, whether they are friends, relatives, or co-workers. The conjunction of the energies of human beings is what brings happiness. So it is very difficult to live alone, isolated. It's very difficult to be happy in this situation. Of course, the financial side must also be in balance with all the other aspects of our lives. It is important to live a comfortable life, and the financial side brings that comfort. We live in a capitalist world, and in order to have comfort, it is necessary to have material goods, of course. So that is important. We on the spiritual level know that. We know that it is important to seek comfort through your financial life. It's important to have this. However, it is also very important that you have a spiritual life, that you never leave aside spiritual issues, energy issues, to keep yourself at a high energy level, in a high vibration. Therefore, social life, financial life, and spiritual life have to be in balance. They have to have the same importance in our life, okay? Giving some examples of imbalance: when the person lives intensely social life, seeking joy among friends, forgetting the other aspects of life, such as material, financial, and spiritual life, the person goes into imbalance. When a person devotes a lot of time to making money at any price, just for the desire to accumulate goods, sometimes harming people for it, it is certainly an unbalanced life. Another example are people who live only for spiritual life, isolating themselves from the world, such as Buddhist monks, who are also in imbalance, because it is important that we live life and that our passage on the material plane has the coexistence with other people. So isolating yourself from the world is not having a balanced life. It is important that this message is very clear to everyone, to all people in the universe. The message is: live in balance, seek balance in your lives. Of course, this is a very complicated task. We know that, but this search for balance is important. It is important to keep this balance in mind. And it is important that each human being has awareness about that. When one of the aspects of life is unbalanced, the path must be corrected. You must have this perception, and this correction must be made. Currently, in the material world, there is a very great race to obtain and to accumulate material goods. It must be said that the accumulation of goods is something that ends up unbalancing the life of the human being. Many seek the accumulation of goods, thinking about the future, their future, and the future of their families. It must be said also that every human being must strive to achieve his own balance, even in relationships between parents and children. What we see a lot are parents accumulating assets, thinking about the future of their children or their family. It is important to say that parents are rather responsible for their children, meaning that they are responsible for the education of their children. They are responsible for helping their children see life as it should be, and to prepare their children for the world. It is necessary to give an education and moral conditions for your children to make their own paths, draw their own paths, their goals. Nowadays, what we see often are parents providing everything for their children, and in this way they do not prepare them for life. They do not prepare them for the world, but rather create them inside a glass dome. Afterwards, the moment your children faces the world, they are not prepared for it. Therefore, it is important that parents prepare their children by giving support so that they can walk on their own feet. This is the experience that all humans have to live in the material world. Don't protect your children by putting them in a glass dome so that nothing bad happens to them. That's an extremely bad thing for your kids. There must also be a balance on the issue of the education of children. Children have to set their goals, have their own goals, achieve their goals with their own efforts. It's important that this is said. It is also important to say that those human beings who, by their own efforts, have reached a high financial, social, and spiritual level know how to donate their energies, their knowledge to the less fortunate. It is important that human beings who have conditions know how to practice charity. It is well known that the less fortunate are, in the vast majority, in a less favorable situation because they chose to live in this way when they made their reincarnation plan. However, showing charity towards others should be understood as an enhancing act, okay? We know that a human being who is in an unfavorable situation chose to be in that situation. When his reincarnation plan was drawn up, he chose to be in that situation, most likely to learn to be more humble because of mistakes he had made in past lives. Reaching out to this human being, practicing an act of charity, will make this human being know that there are human beings who care about him, and maybe a helpful act such as this will help you in your life's purpose. Therefore, charity is also an aspect of life that has to be kept in balance. Several other meanings can be mentioned for the word balance. Balance in all things. Balance between the pleasures of the material world and your health is also a point to be discussed. We know that many human beings end up unbalanced in terms of health because of the pleasure in consuming certain foods or beverages. The material world is full of things that give you pleasure, food and drinks that give you pleasure. Human beings ended up investing a lot of time to produce things, objects, foods, in search of comfort and pleasure. So today, many people seek pleasure in the act of eating, and this has brought about a great imbalance in their health. It is common to see humans with high rates of glucose, cholesterol, triglycerides, and various other things unbalanced in their bodies. It is necessary to seek the balance between the pleasure of eating and your health. That's another aspect of balance. We can also mention that the human being was created to be on the move. We can say that our ancestors in remote times had to hunt to have their own food. And with that, they maintained balance in the body because they were always on the move so they could feed themselves. Nowadays, we know that reality is very far from this. If you have possessions, you will have food on the table. And with that, we also see another aspect of the imbalance. People who do not exercise and consume much more calories than they spend. Again, the organism ends up becoming unbalanced. Therefore, it is important, as we said at the beginning, that the short, medium, and long-term goals should be outlined, considering all these aspects that we said about balance. It is important that these messages reach as many people as possible, so that everyone thinks about these issues and sets their goals and goals balancing all these parts of their lives. Well, Master Tanaka, we believe the message of this session is very clear, and we can end our session here. I'm very grateful to all spirits of light who are present here. I am also grateful to Channel and to Master Tanaka. I would like to mention that all this energy emanating during this session is a great example of balance. So be it, Master Tanaka. Thank God. Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank God. Good evening.